Well, it won't be long and you'll be wishing Elder Pat was back up here. I'm going to be challenging you guys today. I need your help today. This sermon's going to be more interactive than most. And so I know for some of you that's a stretch, but we're going to work at stretching ourselves today. All right, so the first stretch is this. How many of you, by a show of hands, have been to the southernmost point of the contiguous United States in Key West, by a show of hands? Yeah, that's a lot. I kind of assumed that before I wanted to ask that question. Now let me ask you this question. How many of you have been to the northernmost point of the contiguous United States? I'm not talking Alaska, I'm talking that farthest point of Minnesota. How many of you have seen that buoy by show of hands? All right, a few. That's what I figured. All right, so some of you know that my family and I just got back from a road trip. We decided that we would take our children. What we like to do as a family is travel together because you learn a lot about the country and you also learn a lot about each other when you travel together. And so we made it a goal to try to help our kids to see as much of our country as we possibly can. We thought that was a worthy goal as parents, and so that's what we've set out to do. And this summer, we decided to go as a family to see the Great Lakes. And I think that everyone, if you're able, should do that. They're pretty awesome. Well, my wife Erin had the idea that as part of that Great Lakes trip, what we should do is go to the northernmost point of the contiguous United States. Now, what you need to know about the northernmost point of the contiguous United States is you got to want to get there. To get to the northernmost point of the contiguous United States, you have to go through two separate border crossings. You have to cross into Canada, where there are guards that will check you out and make sure you are legit, to get into Canada so that you can drive 30 miles on a dirt road to get to another border checkpoint. Now, I'm not talking good gravel roads. I'm talking bumpy dirt roads with some gravel. Some of you remember having these roads as children. I know I do. And it made me appreciate our state for paving our roads and our county for taking care of our roads. Anyway, you got to want to get there because when you start out across those dirt roads, you start doing some math in your head. You look at the mileage remaining on your fuel tank and you wonder if you've got enough fuel to make it into this godforsaken place and back out. And along the way, I noticed that Erin gave me this look. And she didn't have to say a word. I knew what the look meant. It was, this better be worth it. And so you go through the first checkpoint to get into Canada, and you drive the 30 miles on the dirt road where you get to another checkpoint that has no human guards. Instead, it is guarded by black flies. And I'll let you figure out which is harder to get through. But after you get through the black flies and the borders, then you get to this buoy that looks very much like the buoy in Key West. Instead of being red and black, it's blue and black, and it tells you that you have made it. The reason I'm telling you this story is that the Bible speaks of another border. The Bible tells us that there was a border that people had to get to the other side of. In fact, they were expelled to the other side. To use our language, they were deported to the other side of this border. And Genesis teaches us that there were angels at the border, and there was a flaming sword that prevented the original citizens from going back. All right, so I want you to hold that image in your mind because we begin our series, Holy Ground, right there, Genesis, the place it all started, the Garden of Eden. That's where we need to start. I believe there are at least 6 places in Scripture that everyone needs to know something about, and we do well to start right at Genesis. So I'm going to show you physically where we believe that the Garden of Eden was located. And so if Dee Dee, if you'll pull up this map, I want you guys to see that there are 3 locations that scholars believe the actual Garden of Eden was located. The first one is up at the top in modern-day Turkey. In the Bible, we hear of 4 rivers, 2 of which are ancient rivers that no longer exist, and two of which still exist to this day, the Tigris and the Euphrates, which we can find on a map. And if you see that, the Tigris and Euphrates are both flowing down through ancient Mesopotamia, which we call Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, into what is now the Persian Gulf. The first location proposed by scholars for the Garden of Eden is up in Turkey, where the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates reside. Now, that is a minority consensus on that being the original location. In fact, most scholars put the original Garden of Eden in southern Iraq, where there is very fertile ground. If you think about Iraq, maybe some of you have actually been there. Not all the ground is really fertile. In fact, if you go to the Holy Land, that land flowing with milk and honey, when you cross over the border, you may be asking yourself, where is all the milk and honey? It's desert. But there are places even within the desert that are very fertile and green and life-giving and lush. And so scholars believe that the original garden was likely in southern or modern-day Iraq, right where the Tigris and Euphrates come back together before flowing into the Persian Gulf. Now the third, and since I'm a three-point guy, I want to give you three. The third possible location is actually under the Persian Gulf itself. Scientists have studied the bottom of these bodies of water. We learned that when we were at the Great Lakes, but also they looked at the seafloor of the Persian Gulf, and there are two ancient riverbeds that flow underneath the Persian Gulf. And they believe that this could possibly be the two rivers that no longer exist on our maps. And in fact, that the original garden was right where the Persian Gulf was, and as a result of the flood, was buried under water. So you know where the Garden of Eden was physically located, roughly, in a roundabout way. So what? Here's what really sticks in my craw. This land, ancient Mesopotamia, not only did the Jewish people write about it and Christians believe about it, but the ancient Mesopotamian religions talked about a land that was flowing with goodness, an absence of evil, where God the Creator had made this garden, this delightful place where people could live in harmony and peace. And I want you to look at that map and realize to yourself that ever since humans were put here, we've been causing war and exile and strife in that same location ever since. Even to this very day. Where is the war waging that we have a part in right now? Right in that same area. That should spiritually stick with us. That God created the garden to be a place of perfect peace. And when God gives us something good, because of our sinful nature, we take what is good and corrupt it and turn it into something God had never intended. But that doesn't take away what God intends for us. So I don't want this to be a negative Nancy sermon. I want it to lift you up and give you a guide for living your life today. Because if God believed and God purposed us to live that way then I'm here to tell you that the garden is still accessible to us today. Not physically. We can't travel there. We can't jump on an airplane and visit the Garden of Eden. But spiritually, we can go there and live just as God has intended. So I want to show you this. I want to show you this in three ways. I want to tell you that the Garden of Eden is a preview of paradise. And secondly, I want to tell you that we have a permanent passport. That is, we have access to the garden. And finally, I want to say that it is a pattern indeed for us in the present to live. We just prayed, as Addison led us in the Lord's Prayer. A central piece of the Lord's Prayer, if you look at it, is Jesus taught us to pray that things on earth would be just like they are in heaven. Jesus taught us to pray that way so that we would believe that it's possible and that we would actually follow that as a guide. They said, how do we pray, Jesus? He said, pray like this, that things on earth would be like they are in heaven. That God's kingdom would come. And Jesus said, the kingdom of God is all around you. So what I want you to know is paradise isn't just a place we're waiting for. That holy ground is right underneath our feet. That God has given us the goodness, the purpose, the life. that we still have. What was in Eden is right underneath our feet. So I want to talk to you first about how the Garden of Eden is a preview of paradise. The first thing and most important thing you should know is that God's design and plan for humanity is revealed in the book of Genesis in the first 3 chapters. God intends us to live a certain way, and God intends to live a certain way with us. This is a preview. The first 3 chapters of Genesis are a preview, and everything else that comes after is really commentary on that plan of God's. And so as part of that, the most important thing that makes the ground underneath our feet holy is that God is present there. I want you to read Genesis, and I want you to see in Genesis that it says that God dwelt with the first humans. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, so was God. In fact, it said God walked in the garden himself. He called out to Adam and Eve himself. And so the place of paradise, the preview of paradise, is to be in the presence of God. I want to cite for you Revelation 21. It envisions a new Jerusalem. How many of you love Revelation 21? That vision. Everyone will say, what's heaven going to look like? You point at Revelation usually, and you say, here it is, here it is. Revelation 21 tells us this: there will be a new Jerusalem where God himself will be their God and they will be his people. God will be with them. What's that sound like to you? It sounds like Genesis to me. That God will be with them. Revelation doesn't stop there. It goes on. Chapter 22. It envisions a split river. In fact, it says the river of God flows from God's throne, and when it gets to this tree, it splits. And the waters are clear and flow around it, and it is the tree of life in this place. Where was the tree of life originally? Where have you heard that? It was in the Garden of Eden. God is intending that to be a preview of what we will see when God comes in his fullness and takes us there, to be with him forever. It's clearly a preview text. Revelation 22 tells us that the tree of life stands there and it bears constant fruit. There is no want. We don't live in the land of scarcity anymore, where we're vying for resources. God provides every day, month in and month out. It says that in Revelation 21. And then finally it says its leaves. Do you know what the leaves of the tree of life are for? Oh, I saw it. The healing of the nations. What a vision. It is a preview of how we are supposed to live, how we will live, in fact, eternally, when things on earth are finally made like they are in heaven, completely, absolutely. And until then, we can live as if that is true. Jesus says this to the thief on the cross. Do you remember the thief on the cross? I love that story. I bring it up all the time. The thief on the cross, he wasn't baptized. He didn't do anything to earn God's love. He just said, when you get to that place, will you just remember me? When you get to your Father's house, will you just remember me, Jesus? And Jesus looks at him, and what's Jesus say back to this no good thief that doesn't deserve it? Truly, I tell you, you will be with me in... This is going to be interactive. You got to get louder. Truly, I tell you, this day you will be with me in... Oh, that's great. That's it. But do you know that word, paradise? Paradisos. It's actually found in the Greek version of the Old Testament, known as the Septuagint, which is the version they would have been using as Jesus was walking the earth. And instead of it saying in the Septuagint, Garden of Eden, that word, paradisos, is the word rendered for garden. The paradise of Eden. And so there is a direct connection between our Lord, the Son of God, and the Old Testament's vision for how we should live, between Eden and the paradise Jesus envisions. It is a preview, folks. Everything you need to know about how you should live is right there. In harmony with God, in harmony with each other, taking care of our creation. It's all right there for us. It's a preview of paradise. That's why the Garden of Eden is holy ground. That's why it can apply to you this day, and it can help you with your life. Paradise is the place we're meant to be. We should live as if that is true. Here's the second thing. We have a permanent passport. You remember let's raise our hands again. Why don't we try that? Have any of you crossed the border lately? Have any of you crossed the border in the last 5 years? Getting better. Have any of you crossed the border since 9/11? What was it like before 9/11 unto today? Pretty hard, right? I'll tell you what, you go to the northernmost point, you got to want to get there. You got to cross the Canadian border where they're looking at you with the stink eye. They don't really love us up there right now. And then if you get past the Canadian border, you got to get past the black flies. And after you get past the black flies and survive them, you got to come back, check back in with Canada. Then you drive through Canada to get to the U.S. checkpoint, and they're wondering why you went to Canada in the first place. And I'm here to tell you, if I didn't have 4 kids with me and my wife, I'd probably be in a Canadian prison right now. It's hard. But here's the good news of the gospel. We have been given a permanent passport to paradise. We have. It's true. The gospel is this. Jesus died to give us that passport. In Genesis, the first citizens of Eden were disobedient. This is why they got deported. They got kicked out. Why were they disobedient? They wanted to eat not of the tree of life, catch that. What tree did they want to eat of? The knowledge of good and evil. This is the best application maybe in the whole sermon. We are not meant to know everything. We are not. Some things God has to handle for us and hold for us. We can't figure out why bad things happen to good people any more than we can figure out why good things happen to bad people. There are certain things that we don't need to know about. In fact, if you knew when you were going to die, every single one of you would be anxious right now. You wouldn't be able to sit here. You would be pacing and looking out the window and praying to God. They wanted to eat of that. They were disobedient, and they were kicked out. And to guard it, catch this. This is powerful. A flaming sword was put right at the gate of paradise. How many of y'all have flaming swords blocking your way to paradise? How many of y'all got one foot in Eden and the other foot in Sodom and Gomorrah? How many of y'all say, I'm going to live in the light of the Lord and step into darkness every now and then? And that's your flaming sword. What flaming sword is in your way? Because you got a permanent passport. Do you know what the permanent passport is? It's the reversal of the sin curse. Paul puts it this way. I want to give it to you. Write down Romans 5, 17 through 19. In that place, Paul says, just as one man's disobedience. Hey, women, this is good news. It was one man. Paul said it. It's Adam's fault. Just as one man was disobedient and it led to sin, exile, and death, by God's grace, this is a paraphrase, but it's right there. By God's grace, we have been given new life and freedom through one man, Jesus Christ. What's that mean? That means that the gate is open, brothers and sisters. That the flaming sword is only in your own hands. And you keep putting them up in front of the gate instead of walking right through it. We have the permanent passport, but you got to walk across the border. It's there. It's right there in black and white Scripture. God has given us that passport. This is not paradise lost, as Milton put it. It is heaven in your hands. And all you got to do is hold on to it. That's it. You are free of sin. You are free. If you embrace it and hold on to it and don't put flaming swords in your path, that will feel like paradise. But if you keep putting up your flaming swords, you're never going to get there. You're only going to get burned. Drop your weapons. As Isaiah said, let them be beaten into plowshares. Let them be turned into pruning hooks. And walk across that border because you got a passport. A passport to paradise. And it's permanent. All right, let me tell you about the third thing. We have a pattern for the present. And the third thing sounds like an echo of the first thing, but it's not. The first thing is that the Garden of Eden gives us a preview. But a preview is no good unless you do something about it. You know, they show previews at the movies. You say, I really like that, but then you don't show up for the movie, it doesn't even matter. So we have a preview in Genesis, but what we need to do is follow the pattern. And Genesis also gives us a pattern for the present. And so I want to go back to my trip with you for a minute. So we drove up through Michigan, and although I don't really like that state, I found a few redeeming things there. And when we got up into the UP of Michigan, again, let's be interactive. How many of you have been to the UP of Michigan? Not many. God bless your souls, because it is desolate. I've been to all 48 lower states, and the UP of Michigan may be the most desolate place I've ever been. The roads are straight, and there's forest everywhere. I mean, you drive 100 miles straight without seeing a soul or a gas station. It's wild in the truest sense of that word. But here's what Aaron noticed and called our attention to. Everywhere we went up through there, from Michigan to Minnesota to North Dakota, was clean. I mean, it was clean. You ever driven down Route 60 toward Lexington? Not clean. Not even close to clean. But everywhere we drove, it was really clean. And I mean, this is desolate. They had every reason to throw out McDonald's bags along that country because no one would have saw them do it, but it was clean. And I was wondering about that. I was kind of thinking about that. And then Erin spoke up. She said, you know why it is? Look at those signs. Adopt a highway. You remember when we actually did that? I thought we still did it, but I looked it up. You know, Google's pretty powerful. So I looked it up. Adopt a highway in Kentucky has been suspended because of liability issues. Imagine that. You want to talk about a flaming sword. We're worried that someone can't walk down the shoulder of the highway picking up trash without getting hit. Behind every person, there's policy. So somebody's done it. But anyway, what I was thinking about is, here's the guide, right in Genesis. If you read it, what is man's purpose? What is humanity's purpose in Genesis? It says, if you read it, and I'll paraphrase it for you, that God created this paradise of Eden, and in it he put humans. And he says the sole purpose was for them to tend it and till it. Our job, brothers and sisters, is to tend to God's good creation. And if God is a boss, he'd probably already fired us. He'd sent us to HR at the very least. Our job and our purpose is to tend to God's creation. How are we doing with that? Now, I don't believe that we can solve the calamity of our creation crisis by picking up a McDonald's bag, but it's a start. You may be thinking to yourself, why in the world would anyone come to Mount Sterling, Kentucky, right? That's kind of the way we look at ourselves because we're here. We don't appreciate what we got because we're in it all the time. Think about that for a minute. But anyway, I want to tell you, and Alex can probably repeat it, people do come here from all over the place. If you go down to the Red River Gorge and you look at the license plates in there, you could play the license plate game all in just the Red River Gorge and probably get all of them. And you know where those people stay? They're not staying at Natural Bridge on top of it. They're staying in places around. And I started thinking about that. What if people from Minnesota, North Dakota, and Michigan came down here and they drove out Route 60? What would they think of our creation care? Pretty shameful, isn't it? Now, I can't solve climate change, and I can't solve the crisis that humans have created with our world. But I can pick up a trash bag. And so as a big goal, as part of what Genesis and the pattern has taught me, is Aaron and I are going to call the state and say, why can't we start this back up? Every 2 miles, adopt a highway. If you adopt it, they put your name on a sign and you take care of 2 miles of highway. I can do that. I can go out, and here's the high bar for doing that. 4 times a year, you got to go out and pick up trash. Wow, that sounds terrible. 4 whole times, 2 miles. I can do that. But until then, I mean, that's a pretty lofty goal to get the state to put back in something that they're afraid of. I don't know that that'll happen, but until then, I can pick up trash. I see Judith Goldie doing it all the time, keeping the streets nice and pretty all the way down North Maysville. That's creation care, brothers and sisters. We can do that. And here's what I'm here to tell you. If you take that pattern for paradise and you apply it, and you do the little things, eventually you're going to arrive at the big things. Have you ever heard of the applause ladder? Show of hands. Come on, this is interactive. Applause ladder. Have any of you heard of it? None. It's a team building exercise where you start small and you work up big. All right, so we're going to do this. It's called the applause ladder. Team builders do this when you're together, so they show you that positivity and doing positive things is contagious. So what we're going to do is we're going to start clapping. And we're going to start with a golf clap. Now, the Open Championship is going on, and if you've watched it, you know how golf claps work. So golf clap with me, please. Yeah, that's pretty good. Don't act like you don't know how to golf clap. Golf clap with me. Now we're going to take it up a notch. We're going to go to church clap, which is just a little bit above golf clap. Let's church clap together. Keep clapping, keep clapping. Now what we're going to do is we're going to act like something good has happened to us. Clap like something good has happened to us. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to clap like Jesus himself has come back to make earth like it is on heaven. Let's clap like that. Come on, somebody. Yeah. I ain't stopping clapping. Keep clapping. Yeah. Now, here's what I'll tell you about the applause ladder. If I would have started by telling you to clap with me raucous and loud, very few of you would have been able to do it. You just don't do it. You're not courageous enough. You're not going to I'm not going to say, my neighbor thinks I'm clapping. They think I'm crazy. But if one claps, another one will clap. And when another one claps, another one claps. And if I tell you to start out small and work your way big, the odds of you making that are exponentially great. So how many of you would like to clap that the little bit of trash we pick up and take out of our lives can make the world a better place? How many of you would like to clap about that? How many of you would like to clap that you got a permanent passport? How many of you would like to clap that you're free of sin? How many of you would like to clap that there will be a day where there is no war, that there is no strife, there is no division? How many of you would like to clap about that? How many of you would like to clap that we will be in a place where there is no more suffering, no more pain, and God himself will be with us? Tell somebody. And what I came to tell you today is that when we start clapping, others are going to be clapping with us. So go from this place and clap, church. Clap with all your hearts. Make the small changes that will lead to a big difference. You have a permanent passport. We've had the preview, and now you got the pattern. Go out and do it. The gate's open. There is no flaming sword, only the one you're holding in your hands. If you haven't confessed your sin and given your life to Christ, this is the opportunity to do that. Maybe you've already done that and you just need to come for prayer, pray with me, or pray alone. The altar's open for you. Whatever the reason, if the Spirit of God is leading you to come, would you come?